Hello everybody, my name is Niels Buhr from Stonebranch. Today I'm going to talk about how to use AWS SQS message queues in a business process workflow. But first of all, what is Amazon SQS? Amazon Simple Queuing Service is a message queue service used by distributed applications to exchange messages through a polling model and can be used to decouple sending and receiving components. This allows you to decouple and scale microservices, distributed systems, and serverless applications. Using SQS, you can send, store, and receive messages between software components. Let me give you an example from Stack Overflow, why to use message queues. Let's say you have built a mobile voting app for a popular TV show, and 5 to 25 million viewers are all voting at the same time, at the end of each performance. How are you going to handle that many votes in such a short space of time, say 15 seconds? You could build a significant web server tier and database backend that could handle millions of messages per second, but that would be expensive. You'd have to pre-provision for maximum expected workload. If a few people voted, then you're overpaying for infrastructure. If voting went crazy, then votes could be lost. A better solution would be to use a queuing mechanism that decoupled the voting apps from your voting count application. The vote queue would be highly scalable, so it could happily absorb 10 messages per second or 10 million messages per second. Then you would have an application tier pulling messages from that queue as fast as possible to tally the votes. Now let us have a look how AWS SQS is supported in Universal Automation Center. To support integrating AWS SQS services in your existing and new automation workflows, Stonebranch has developed an SQS task, which allows to create, send and monitor SQS messages. You can create and send SQS messages out of any modern application by calling the Create SQS Message task via the Universal Controller REST API. Let us have a look at a use case to order online a book. The use case will show how to trigger the ordering process of a book using an SQS message. Let's assume you have entered all the details about the order, like name of the book and delivery address, in the e-commerce application and press the Order Now button. The e-commerce application has been configured to start the SQS task in Universal Controller, which we have named New Order Task. The task is started by simply making a REST API call against the Universal Controller REST API. This REST call contains all the parameters required for the order process. Any modern web application should be able to perform such a simple REST call. The started SQS task creates a message, which is inserted into the message queue with all the parameters required for the book order. The SQS monitor polls in configurable intervals the SQS queue, and once a message is received, it will start the process order workflow, which makes a new order entries in the SAP system and sends out an email once the order is processed. The advantage of such a message queue-based process is that you are able to decouple your order application, which needs to handle thousands of book orders per second, from the long-running SAP process. Let me now switch to the Universal Controller for the demo. I'm now logged into the Universal Controller web GUI. Authentication is done via LDAP, Active Directory or SAML protocol. The web user interface is fully configurable. Per job profile, each member sees only the jobs and workflows he is responsible for, and gets only the permission related to his job role. The entire solution is web-based and is also available as Software as a Service cloud offering. The main entities are the tasks, like Linux task, Windows task, ZOS task, SAP task, PeopleSoft task, file transfer task, etc. And the triggers to schedule the task, like active triggers, cron triggers, time triggers, temporary triggers, task monitor triggers, email monitor triggers, etc. An SQS task is also only a standard task. A special task is a workflow task, which can represent a complete business process. Let me demo you the workflow task I created for the sales order process. So this workflow task starts actually with a monitor for new sales order. This task monitors in an SQS queue. In this case, the SQS queue is called orders2, monitors for a new message. To connect to AWS, you need to provide the different credentials, so the access key, secret access key, and default region. All these keys are securely stored in our database. Optionally, you can use a proxy to connect to AWS. And we also support role-based access. The polling frequency in this case is 10 seconds. Of course, you can change this. So every 10 seconds, the monitor checks for a new message arrive in the orders to queue. Once a message is arrived, the next process is started. This in this case, the order process task. Once the order process task is finished, the SAP system is started to make a new order entry. Once the SAP system has made the new order entry, an email is sent out with all the order details. But now the question comes, how do we create now the message in the queue that this task is monitoring for? For this, we have created a task called New Sales Order. This task, of course, also needs the credentials to connect to the AWS account, and it needs to say to which queue it should write the message, in this case to the orders to queue. Then you need all the attributes the message should contain. So these attributes we provide here as variables. In this case, it's actually the address of the guy who bought the book, like the first name, last name, the street he's living in, the zip code, etc. And of course, also the information about the book he ordered. In this case, he ordered the book Algorithms for Data Structures from Nicholas Wirth. Very nice, famous book. How do you start now this task? Of course, I could just launch it here, and then it would create the message in the queue. But you can also launch this task using the REST API. Like this, you can launch this task from any web application. So for example, from your e-commerce application. As I do not have an e-commerce application, I'm using the Postman system. So this is, I think, familiar to most of the people watching this. So basically, I'm telling the Postman system to call this endpoint ops task launch and to call it with the parameters required for the book order. In this case, the first name, last name, city, street, zip code, the title of the book he orders, the book number of the book, and the customer ID. So the only thing I need to do is say send. That means I'm posting to this endpoint. This is actually the task I'm starting with these parameters. And as you can see, if I look at the response was successful. So actually, I've started the task New Sales Order. This task automatically enters a message into the queue. So if I go to the monitor task, you see it's already successful. So it has already identified the new message, which has been received. The order was also already processed, and the SAP task is running. Let's have a look at the SAP task. You see the SAP job has been started, so it's not finished. So we need to wait a bit. And as you can see, new job order entry has been done, order entry received for new books, order was processing has been started and is already ended. So also the SAP process is finished and an email is now sent out with all the order details. Let's have a look at the email. And as you can see, the email has arrived. So you can see same time as my desktop computer. So everything is real. If I look at the email contains all the information about the new order. The customer name, first name, last name, city, zip code. So all the information which was formerly in the message which we sent to the SQS message queue is available in this email task, basically the last task in my workflow. This was the demo I wanted to show to you. Let me summarize what you have seen. With the new SQS task, you can create, send, and monitor SQS messages. You can trigger an SQS message out of any modern application by calling the Universal Controller REST API. The new SQS task can be integrated into any existing or new automation workflow like any other task. In the background, we are using the Python Boto3 module. This allows to quickly introduce new AWS services and to update the current SQS task when new requirements occur. I hope you've enjoyed this demo. Thanks a lot.